Let's live in a world, as we have this conversation, where Tua is a question mark. A year ago at this time, the Dolphins were talking about tanking for Tua. Now they are probably 2 weeks away from drafting him. But given his injury history and the inability to travel, his projection becomes a whole lot less certain. So, Dan Graziano, I come back to you, our insider. Tua, question marks. Justin Herbert feels like a lot more of a sure thing, but maybe some people are questioning how high his ceiling is. In your view, is it a slam dunk that if they're both sitting there at 5, Miami takes Tua and not Herbert?
No, Greeny, I don't think that's a slam dunk at all. I think it's entirely possible that in that situation, the Miami Dolphins would opt for Justin Herbert. And for the reasons that you indicate, Tua Tagovailoa is someone who comes in with health questions, and not about, will he be ready to start the season, but long-term durability. You heard Dolphins owner Stephen Ross even talk about this before the Combine, talking about he's a great player, but obviously there are health concerns. Miami's going to have to make sure those concerns are allayed to enough of an extent to that they believe it's worth risking the number 5 overall pick, or possibly multiple picks if they have to move up to get him, on a player who might not be consistently available for them down the road. Having 3 first-round picks gives them a little bit of a cushion in terms of using that asset, but I think it's entirely possible that given the choice, they would go with the healthier option in Justin Herbert, because a lot of these teams really like to avoid and minimize risk with those very, very high picks.
Boy, that would be fascinating. So, Dan, thank you. Let me get Mel back in here. Mel, over the many years I've been watching you on this draft, I've heard you be very critical of a lot of picks, frequently with my team, the New York Jets, over the course of time. If the Dolphins were to take Justin Herbert at 5 with Tua Tagovailoa still on the board, in your view, would that be an outlandish decision to make?
No, it's easy for me to sit here and say I have Burrow, then Tua, then Herbert and Love. I'm not making that pick for my organization with that injury. And that injury is critical in 2 ways. He's had the injuries. You don't know where he is with that. You think he's coming back and everything's encouraging? Great. But once he's in the league, is he going to be durable or is he going to be fragile? And that's the thing you don't know till he's in the league, taking hits from NFL players, not college players, where he couldn't hold up. That's why this notion that Justin Herbert is no longer around or has never been around is ridiculous. Justin Herbert's always been around. He's gifted. This ceiling stuff is garbage. He's got the ceiling. What he has to do is, coming out of Oregon, adjust to the NFL. He still showed that at Senior Bowl week in Mobile, showed it in the game when he was MVP. We know he's got the skill set. So Justin Herbert, whether you like him or you don't, is in that discussion. For Miami, what they have to figure out is, and they know it right now, is there a gap between Tua and Herbert? Are they equal? If they're equal, you probably go Herbert because of the injury of Tua. You don't move up to get Tua unless there's a big gap between Tua and Herbert. If you think it's Tua and nobody else after Burrow, you go up and get Tua. But if it's close or they're equal, obviously Herbert's heavily in that discussion.
All right, closer than I thought you were going to handicap it, Mel. Thank you. Let me go back to Rex and Neek here. And Dominique, I'm going to start with you. What word jumps to your mind when you hear this conversation about the possibility of Herbert ahead of Tua?
Subterfuge. Like there's no way that this is at all realistic. I think that anyone who's watched these guys play, and there's no disrespect meant to Herbert, he is talented. He may grow into a Pro Bowler in this league, but anybody who has taken an honest, sober look at the film between those two guys, there is a huge gap in the talent there. And if you're afraid of the injury, like, this is football, it's a risky game. You have to take these risks, and drafting a quarterback with the way that the CBA is set up so that first-round picks don't get paid as much is not nearly as risky as people think. I think it's a smart idea to go with Tua there. It is not smart to go with Herbert, which would be, in my mind, a drastic reach to get Herbert at 5 when you could get Tua at that same spot. And it's not without risk. If you pass up on Tua, something that we've talked about, Greeny, on this show before, that is also a risk. And I think that's a scarier risk. If you bring Tua in and he fails, that sets your franchise back for maybe 2 or 3 years. If he goes somewhere else and has success for a decade plus, and you have to watch some other team go to championships with the quarterback that you should have had, that's going to cost you your job too. So that's not without risk.
Let me go to Rex then on this, because Rex, you were the guy giving us Daniel Jones last year long before anyone thought it might happen, and I feel like you like Herbert. How about the notion of Herbert over Tua?
Yeah, it's just like last week I said that Herbert, I think, is going to be an outstanding prospect. I don't, and it's certainly not a reach to go up, because if Herbert doesn't go at 5, he's going to go at 6. So to me, I don't think it's a huge risk. Now, I will say this. Tua, to me, that is Drew Brees. Unlike other guys that said Baker Mayfield is Drew Brees, no, he isn't. This guy actually is. He's accurate as heck like Drew Brees. He moves the pocket like Drew Brees. So to me, that's what you're passing on. Now, is there a risk involved? Oh my gosh, is there a risk involved? There's 5 surgeries that I've been told that he's had, so absolutely it's a risk if you take Tua. So I can understand if Herbert goes ahead of Tua. It's not because of the player, though. I can tell you that much, because I would take Tua.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.